Welcome back to ESPR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Greg, Elliot, and Paul. We are here for the big fight breakdown ahead of the big heavyweight fight on December the 23rd in Saudi Arabia, live on DAZN. Anthony Joshua will face Swedish heavyweight Otto Wallin in a fight that we possibly weren't expecting to see. There were rumours of Joshua Wilder, as there have been for the last 7 or 8 years, but we're here. Wallin is a strong contender, and it's going to be a really interesting one to pick out with you guys. Gents, good to be joined by all of you again. We've done a few of these videos now. We always enjoy doing them with you. First point we are going to touch on is Otto Wallin Anthony Joshua's toughest opponent in the last 5 years? Joshua, obviously, in the last 5 years, he's had those 2 losses to Alexander Usyk. So beaten Kubrat Pulev in the ninth round. Got that rematch win against Andy Ruiz. Of course, had the first loss against Andy Ruiz, and this year he has fought Jermaine Franklin and Robert Helenius, which have both been wins. Greg, I'll go to you first. Is this the best win in the last 5 years, or was it somebody else?
I thought Pulev was really underrated. Pulev's a really good fighter, man. Really good amateur. Beat some really good guys in the pros. Dealt with Derek Chisora, one of the best that anybody's ever dealt with him. I think that one was a really good one, albeit towards the end of his career. He still had a really close fight with Derek Chisora after that again, didn't he? It could possibly be, yeah. Otto Wallin, he's pushed Tyson Fury all the way. He's just came off a loss against Gassiev, but I don't think Gassiev's a heavyweight with the greatest of respect. So, yeah, it's either the best, it's right up there.
Yeah, I think Otto Wallin. I think that we can get into this maybe a bit later, but I think there are question marks whether he's beaten a top heavyweight. If you look at some of the names on his records, I think Dominic Brazil is another maybe notable win on his resume, but whether Brazil is a top heavyweight is to be debated as well. Elliot, would this be Joshua's best win in the last 5 years?
I've seen. Look, you yourself have said this before, that it's hard to sort of grade certain fighters because they've not necessarily fought other fighters. You can kind of grade them, and I think also Wellington for me kind of is in that mold. Like obviously they're close. Well, the fight against Fury, but I mean, people say it was quite close. I mean, Fury had 40 odd stitches above his eye. Obviously, Wallin put him there, but equally he didn't win. So you know, how impaired was Fury in that fight as well? I was getting at with that. Gassiev, I agree with Greg. I don't think Gassiev's really a fully fledged heavyweight, frankly. So it's hard. I don't really know where Wallin's kind of level is, but I would actually probably put the Andy Ruiz victory above Wallin as a challenge, just because of the pressure, frankly, that was on AJ at that time. I think that was almost make or break for him, that fight. And it was almost, you know, when he kind of remolded his style as well around that time. And I think there was a lot more pressure on him then. And even if he prevails against Otto Wallin, I feel like that for me was where he actually showed real sort of mettle, and you know, and to come through that fight, frankly. So that for me is probably the standout victory for him. You know, will be over Otto Wallin, even if he beats Otto Wallin.
Yeah, no. So I think, look, everyone expected him to beat Andy Ruiz the first time. It was a shock defeat, and look, Andy Ruiz, now we're not really sure where his career is at now. He's been very inactive since the Joshua fight, but look, he's a talented heavyweight who may not live up to his full potential. Paul, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? Elliot's going with Ruiz as Joshua's best win in the last 5 years. Do you agree with him, or do you think the beating Otto Wallin would top that?
Yeah, I actually do agree with Elliot to a certain degree in terms of Andy Ruiz as an opponent being the toughest. But then when you take into consideration the version of Andy Ruiz that Joshua fought, like severely overweight, just clearly didn't train properly for that fight. Maybe I think Otto Wallin will be the toughest test of the last 5 years and would go down as his best win. I agree with Greg as well. Pulev was probably an underrated win, but we did all expect him to win that. There's a lot more people, I'd say now, doubting Joshua, and a lot of people thinking that Wallin could pull this off. So for me, that kind of makes him, it probably does make it potentially the best victory of the last 5 years. Obviously, the fact that he's a southpaw as well, Otto Wallin, is an interesting one. Joshua only fought 2 southpaws before, one of which he beat, obviously, in Charles Martin, and then obviously Usyk is the other who beat Joshua twice. So that's an interesting one for me. But so for that reason, I probably would have Wallin just ahead, even though his resume is lacking at heavyweight.
Yeah, look, it's a good point about the southpaw point. The fact that Joshua wasn't aware of him facing, he wasn't aware of him facing Wallin for a long time now. He's not had a long time to prepare. Paul, when you said about people doubting AJ, would you put yourself in that category? Have you been doubting AJ at all?
When I was at his last fight, I thought, oh dear, this isn't the Joshua I remember. But then when he pulled the knockout out of the bag, man, I was like, he was clearly just doing that, wasn't he? So no doubts at all. No doubts for me.
No, because I hate to bring this up, Paul, but I've got some quotes from you from the night. You described him as gun shy, and you at 23:44 on the night you said, "I'm so disappointed. Literally won't throw a punch. This is hard to watch." Now, Paul, I'm sorry to have to do this to you, mate, but do you stand by those comments? Were you a few pints deep at the time? Why did you make those comments?
Well, you know yourself. You've had a few drinks. Nothing too bad at all. It's not like I don't remember sending the messages, but I think sometimes you blow things out of proportion when you've had maybe a drink or two. But yeah, I'm going red now. You've thrown me under the bus. You've absolutely taken me to the cleaners here, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. In all seriousness, I was like when I was there watching, as a massive fan, it was really really frustrating to watch at times that Helenius fight. I think, so I did find it frustrating in that sense. So yeah, it was hard to watch at times, but ultimately he pulled the knockout out of the bag. So who cares?
Yeah, no, look, we'll move on. We don't want to turn this into a bullying session. Next point we're moving on to is Otto Wallin a top 10 heavyweights? Obviously, everyone's got their top 10 pound for pound lists, top 10 lists in different divisions. I think it's a good talking point here. And I think, I'm expecting kind of a range of answers here. Some people discuss top 10 lists a bit differently, whether it's in terms of how good they think the person is or in terms of what they've kind of done and achieved in the sports. Elliot, I'll go to you first. Is Otto Wallin a top 10 heavyweight?
I'm just reeling from Paul's drinking anecdotes. For me, it's essentially it's such a subjective list. He probably is, but that's only because for me it's almost like it drops off after 5. But then equally saying that, like you alluded to his record earlier, the victories he's got on that, Gassiev, Dominic Brazil, the loss to Fury, that's all we're judging him on. We're not actually judging him on wins. So it's in some ways quite hard to then stick him in. You've got other guys around the sort of top 10. I'd have personally liked to have seen Wallin have that fight either with Hrgovic or have beaten Dillian Whyte, as I believed he would have done before we put him in that kind of conversation, because it's just essentially you're kind of putting him in there on potential, I think, rather than actual kind of proven ability. But then you've also got you've got names kicking around there like Parker, Joyce, even Anderson's quite high up in the rankings, isn't he? Bacoli, all these sort of names that are sort of floating from sort of 5 to 10. So for me, he probably is, but he's not like nailed on. It's not nailed on. Oh, this guy should be a top 10 heavyweight. It's quite a weak division, I think, after the top 5. So if you want to stick him in 5 to 10, yeah, but that's not really saying to me that he's that great either. So it's a long way of answering it, but it's just kind of they all kind of similar abilities. I feel like between after a certain number in the rankings. Yeah,
no, completely fair. It's not an easy question to answer. Paul, what are your thoughts? Is Wallin a top 10 heavyweight in your books?
Yeah, he's got to be on the fringe. If he's not top 10, he's definitely top 15 for me. I think you kind of have to rank him around there, just in terms of Elliot is right. We are mostly judging him off a defeat, so think of that what you will. But then, yes, that Gassiev one, people are now saying it's not. Gassiev's not the same at heavyweight, but going into that, like Gassiev was the favorite, was he not? And Gassiev was obviously only had that one defeat down at cruiserweight as well. So it's like that actually is a good win, whether or not Gassiev is a fully fledged heavyweight. But yeah, I think he had to have them on the fringe, on the peripheries of the top 10 for me. Some of those fighters that Elliot mentioned, all around the similar level. But yeah, it's hard to say nailed on that he is a top 10 because he doesn't have those standout wins that maybe the rest of the hypothetical top 10 do.
Yeah. Look, it's a tricky one. Of obviously, look at a win against Anthony Joshua would probably put him in the top 5, not even the top 10, to be honest. So we'll see what happens on December 23rd. Greg, what are your thoughts in terms of a top 10 list? Does Otto Wallin make yours?
Yeah, I've actually quite a strong opinion on it. I think he probably does, but I think anything with the top 4, I think you could probably be selective. I think Wilder, Joshua, Usyk, and Fury are that far ahead, probably, of most other people. That the rest of the rankings, it's really how you like it. But a point that I will make to say that I think Wallin may be top 10 is if you put Otto Wallin in with Zhili Zhang tomorrow, who I think has been blown out of proportion of how good he may be because of the Joyce wins, I think my money's on Wallin in that fight. I think it's a good fight. I think he's very awkward. I think he could outbox Zhang. Zhang needs somebody to stand in front of him that he can hit. Otto Wallin's a southpaw, goes on the back foot, creates angles. That's everything that would be a nightmare for that kind of guy. So when I look at it from that perspective, I think he's got to be top 10.
No, completely fair. Like, interesting what you said on Zhang as well, and interested to see what Zhang does next. I'm sure we could debate how good Zhang is and whether he's top 5, top 10, but that's a debate for another video. But yeah, we'll see. Look, Otto Wallin, he's only got 1 loss on his record, and that's to Tyson Fury. But at the same time, he doesn't have, in my opinion, he just doesn't have a huge amount of impressive names, and it's just a case of whether he can build on the Gassiev win or not. Gents, just one final point before we get on to predictions. Anthony Joshua has another new trainer for this one. It feels like he's got a new trainer for every fight in the last couple of years. Ben Davison, trainer of Lee Woods, trainer of other fighters, trainer of other good fighters as well. Just want to get some quick thoughts on here. Elliot, you've refused to engage on this topic with Greg, which is fair enough. It's completely up to you. So I'm just going to give you the floor now, whether you want to comment on Ben Davison being Joshua's trainer, or if you want to bottle that as well. I'll leave it up to you.
Well, thank you for coming to me first. What do I feel about it? To be honest with you, I feel like the main issues with Joshua are, to me, I mean, I'm not his therapist, but seem psychological. So frankly, if he can come over here and train with Ben Davison in the UK, Ben Davison get his head right, to be honest, I think that would be a good training option. But I don't think he's going to teach Anthony Joshua anything that's going to be, revelatory, quite frankly. I think it's more just a case of, can you gas him up enough that he can believe in himself? And if Ben Davison can do that, fine. Like we've seen AJ go through, to my mind, better trainers and not obviously find a kind of working relationship there. I would like to have seen him probably stay with Garcia. Actually, I thought that performance he put in against Usyk in the second time around was fantastic. I would like to have seen more of that relationship. But yeah, if he's happier training over here with Ben Davison, I'm not going to criticise it. I don't think, I feel like if I was able to, if I had enough time on my hands and read how to become a boxing trainer on Wikipedia, I could do a similar job. Yeah. So, I mean, if he wanted to throw some money at me, I'd have a go as well. But that's what it is for me, really. It's just about psychology with AJ. And if Davison can reach him in that way, then it'd be a good relationship. Other than that, I don't see anything sort of fresh coming from Anthony Joshua, frankly.
No, look, it's interesting. I don't think many people would have predicted another move in trainer. It's felt like the relationship with Derek James was working well. But yeah, and I don't think Joshua's ruled out working with Derek James again in the future, but he's working with Ben Davison for this fight. Paul, thoughts on Ben Davison as Anthony Joshua's trainer for this fight?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, I know what Elliot means about the whole. There's been more proven world-class trainers that he has gone through. Rob McCracken was a world-class coach, as was Garcia, and of course Derek James as well. Not saying Ben Davison isn't. Look at the work he's done with Lee Wood as an example. As you mentioned there, I mean, he's with a whole new lease of life in the Lee Wood. Can he do the same with Joshua? I don't know. I really don't know. I think I completely makes sense to me that the fight was made on 6 weeks' notice, and Eddie Hearn's alluded to this as well. The fact that you have to fly back to Texas, takes 5-6 days to overcome the jet lag, maybe. Then you're training there for 3 weeks before you want to fly out to Saudi 2 weeks before. I do get that. Whether that's kind of twisting the truth a little bit, probably is, but I do understand that. So it does make sense maybe just to stay in the UK where he already was before then flying out to Saudi a couple of weeks out. And I don't see any problem with going to Ben Davison. I think Ben Davison is an accomplished coach now. He obviously has that experience of beating Otto Wallin with Tyson Fury. He was in his corner then. So yeah, interesting. I'm not against it. But yeah, again, like Elliot said, I don't think he'll exactly maybe teach him any new things.
No, completely fair, and a good point that Davison has that experience of being in Fury's corner when he fought Wallin before. Greg, is this a good move? Is it a bad move? What are your thoughts?
In ways, I can see both of what Elliot and Paul are saying. Could they have went to a more established trainer? Yes. But the issue here isn't that, well, like Paul said, it could have been covered up. But what we are being told is he's not broke up with Derek James. It's the time that's available to get ready for this fight. It doesn't make sense to be travelling the world 3 times over. Do you know something? I'm going to put myself out there. I don't want things getting brought back on me the way that Paul got, so I'll come out and say this now. I was always very strong in the opinion that to be like a really good trainer, I think you had to experience boxing yourself. I think you probably had to have experience in a ring, know what you're telling a fighter, why you're telling them. But there's a few people coming through now, and I think the game's changing a little bit. And I think that Ben Davison is a fast growing trainer in the UK. I think he's only going to get better. I think he's going to get it really right with someone one day, and he's probably going to take someone from the beginning to a world title. But that's just based on the experience that he's gaining just now. Lee Wood, he's involved with Jordan Gill now, Josh Taylor previously, Lee McGregor, now Anthony Joshua. These guys aren't going to him for nothing. And I think if those guys are going to him, we can't ignore that. Where I would agree with Elliot is I think AJ's problems are psychologically, and I don't know if there's a trainer out there who is going to be able to tell him what he needs to hear to make him this focused animal in the ring that he needs to be. So the appointment, don't have a problem with it. I think he'll bring some things to his game, but I think the wider issue is Joshua's mentality.
Brilliant. No, some really interesting opinions there. And look, I think the way I see it, let's just see how Joshua gets on. Let's see what the corner works is like on December 23rd. As always, gents, we're going to finish off with some predictions. 30 seconds is all I'm going to give you for each of you. Who am I going to go to first? Paul, going to go to you first. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. What is your prediction at this stage?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I think it could be tight early on. Maybe after 5-6 rounds, we could have it level enough. But I think Joshua might get a late stoppage. I could even see him being behind on the cards. Otto Wallin obviously is a good fighter, but I think there's been a few times he's shown he gets a little tired late on. So it wouldn't surprise me if Joshua took him out within, around 7, 8, 9.
Okay, Joshua's round 7 to 9. Elliot, what is your prediction?
I think Joshua's going to win. I think Joshua's actually going to win on points. The strange thing for me is that I know a lot of people are saying, well, it's more spiteful Joshua coming forward, but actually I'd recommend he fights kind of the way he's done previously, that sort of boxing style that he has, and try and just outpoint Otto Wallin. Frankly, I don't think, having watched Wallin against Gassiev or from Fury to Gassiev, he's bulked up significantly. I don't think he's got the same speed that he actually had early on in his career either. So I think it's actually a good case of matchmaking. I think Joshua points is where I'm looking at, frankly.
Fantastic. 2-0 Joshua. Greg, you going to make it 3-0 or are you going to pick Wallin to win this fight?
No, yeah, I have to be honest. I always say go with your gut instinct. Whatever your gut first tells you, that's what you need to go with. I think Joshua's going to stop Otto Wallin. I think this is a fight where he's going to be forced to fight. I think he could be really put under pressure, and I think the height of Otto Wallin will suit him. I think that it will be tricky in the beginning rounds. I can see it maybe getting to the point where people are thinking, Joshua doesn't look good here. He's maybe just behind in a close fight. I think Wallin will get tired, and I think Joshua will land a shot that's going to put an end to the fight. Whether it's as dramatic as Hellenius, I don't know, but I just think that the styles and the way that Joshua will be forced to fight, I think you'll get a stoppage.
Brilliant. I'm not going to leave myself out of this. I'm going for Joshua to win this fight as well. However, I'm going to go with Elliot. I think it will be on points, and actually think it could be quite close, but I think Joshua will win this fight. Final question, gents. Seeing as we're all going for Joshua to win this fight, will the Deontay Wilder fight happen in 2024? We're just going to do one-word answers here, yes or no. This is assuming Joshua beats Wallin on December 23rd and Wilder beats Park on December 23rd as well. Will this fight happen? Yes or no, Greg?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Elliot?
No.
I'm going no as well. So we're ending with the 2-2 draw. Elliot, Paul, and Greg, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to this one. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin, December 23rd in Saudi Arabia. I will speak to all of you again soon.